right, let's get rolling here. Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are in the world. Thank you so much for joining us today for another episode of Accelo's Best Practices webinar. We really appreciate you being here. Today, we are going to be going over Zapier and how the Accelo integration with Zapier works. And just for clarification, their slogan is Zapier makes you happier. So we can say with 99% certainty that it is pronounced Zapier and not Zapier, because Zapier makes you happier just doesn't make any sense. My name is Lainey, and I am a client success manager here at Accelo, and I will be your host today. I am joined by Malin, who is our brilliant product expert, and he will be your presenter. Just a quick rundown of what we'll be covering in today's webinar. First, we're going to address what exactly is Zapier, and then we're going to talk about what the integration with Accelo does. And then Malin's going to walk us through some example recipes, some really useful and powerful ways in which you can use the integration between Zapier and Accelo. During the webinar, feel free to submit any questions via that really nifty little Q&A function at the bottom of your Zoom screen. We will either address them during the webinar or after the fact. And with that, Malin, I pass it off to you.
Well, thank you, Lainey. We always appreciate that nice introduction. My name again is Malin, and we're going to be showing you through today a couple of Accelo's different and powerful tools for beginning to automate work in and around Zapier. Now, if you're not familiar with it already, Zapier is a special tool that lets you take events that occur in tools like Accelo and many tools across the internet, and to take those events and cause automation to occur, to automate things like email notifications, updating records, starting work. There's a lot we can do with Zapier all across the internet. So we're going to look today at two examples of how you might begin to automate things around Accelo. The first one will be how we start to take new information and automation into Accelo. And the case we'll be using is how you can have forms on your website or in emails. When they're filled out, you can have those come into Accelo as a sales opportunity, which your sales team can follow up on. We'll then be looking at an example of how we can bring information outside of Accelo, taking events like new tasks being assigned and turning those into notifications to send directly to your team, keeping them up to date, whether they're at Accelo or on the road. Now, as Lainey mentioned, please, if there are any questions that arise throughout the process, whether you're looking at a particular Zap which we're setting up, or if you have questions about some of your own, please just put them in the Q&A section in Zoom. We're happy to help show you through those as well. So we're going to start today by setting up a new Zap to begin bringing new information into Accelo through a web form. So the first step that we're going to be setting up is to create a new Zap. Now here in Zapier, we're going to be configuring how that Zap works. Zaps are made up of two important steps that you see here on the left. The first one is the trigger. This identifies when automation should occur and lets us define what program that comes from as well. As you can see, we have quite a few options here in the center, from Google Forms to Jira to Accelo to HubSpot and beyond. Our second step will be to define the action. This is what we want to occur based on the event. So again, that's where we will be first setting up a new sales opportunity for your team to follow up on. So let's get that process started. Our first step again is to configure the trigger, and to do that, we're going to select the app that we're working with. In this case, we're going to be working with a Google form. Now, I've already conveniently set a Google form up in another tab, and if we take a quick look at it, you can see that it's a very simple form. We take in a little basic information about our client, their name, their company, their email address, so that we can just start the conversation. This is a great example of the kind of form you might set up on your website to get new information from prospective interested clients. Now, when that comes in, we're going to want our sales team to follow up with our client directly. And so we want them to be notified immediately that there's an opportunity here. So Zapier is going to help us out there. So back in Zapier, we're going to start the process now for automating that alert. The first thing we're going to do is tell it what we want the event to be, when we want automation to start. And we're going to be looking for a new response to come in from our form. Now, these options you see here are predefined by the service that you're setting up. So these come from Google and what they've set up for Google Forms. We'll see later on some of the predefined steps that we have available for Accelo. And now we get to set up what the actual template will look like and what records we'll be pulling in. This is where Zapier is going to talk directly to our Google account, getting our live forms. Now we have, again, a very simple form with one page of results and one worksheet, and so it's easy for us to select. But Zapier is powerful enough to pull from potentially many different sources and many different worksheets at once. And something that's especially handy about Zapier is it automatically pulls in sample data and automatically performs tests for us. So you don't have to go through an extra step to go out and run a test. It does it right for you there. Now we finished our first step, setting up the trigger for when automation should start. Now we're going to plug that into Accelo to actually notify the sales team. So just like we did previously, we're going to select our app, and this time we're working with Accelo. And since we want to notify our sales team and give them something to follow up on, we're going to create a request based on our client filling out that form. Now you'll notice as I'm going through the account step here that I have a few different accounts included. In most cases, you'll only have the one account set up, but Zapier has some helpful built-in tools to test that account before you go any further to make sure that it works correctly. So we always suggest using that little test button to make sure that it works. And now we set up what we want that request to appear as in Accelo. This is where we'll set up the Accelo specific details like the type of request. We'll make sure that we get our client's contact information included and make sure that the final request looks exactly how we need it for our sales team to do their job. So our first step now is to set up the type of request. So we've got our new leads request type. That'll let us separate this out from all of the other requests we might be working on. And then as we get into the subject and body of the request, we can incorporate some of the details that came to us from our web form. Now we can always type information in directly. And then include more information from our form just by clicking the little options arrow to the side. That way our email notifications and the request itself has more relevant info that we can find helpful right as soon as we start working. And we'll do the same for the body of the email, including just a little bit more. In this case, we'll actually include the information of the person who filled it out. And of course, with Accelo, one of the most important details we'll include is our client's email address. We'll use that to make sure that as we're sending responses to them and as we're starting the conversation, we can actually get a hold of them. And then make sure, of course, that the name of the person and the company is filled out correctly. This way you don't have to create the contacts yourselves later on. They're pulled in directly and automatically. Now, our lead form was pretty simple. We had the person's name and email address. And so our resulting template here is pretty simple as well. For those times when you want to get a little fancier though, you'll notice that Accelo allows you to fill out all manner of additional custom fields dealing with the company record, the contacts, and anything in between. So it's a great opportunity to pull all that information right into the system. And again, Zapier is excellent at sending tests for us. So it's just sent a test through. And if we head on over now to Accelo, we can find the results of our test. And there we have it. A new request has come in from Robert over at Chemicals Incorporated. We have a little bit of information on them, and we've already created the company and the contact for you. And you can immediately then begin responding to the client and moving the conversation forward. Now in this case, we've set up a new Zapier Zap to pull information from the web and from our products into Accelo. The next test we're going to be looking at is how we can start to take information in Accelo and push it out to the web and to the other products that you use through Zapier. So let's finish that Zap. We'll even turn it on there. And we're going to head off and make our new Zap. Now, one of the most common situations where you'll want to take information out of Accelo is for a simple notification. Now, like many of you, we use Slack here at Accelo to make sure that we're up to date on all the little things going on across the company. So today we're going to be setting up a Slack notification for when you're assigned a new task, letting your team know when they're responsible for additional work. Now, the process is very similar to what we just set up for the forms responses. We're going to be setting up the trigger for when automation should occur, and then we'll set up the action to configure how that notification will look in Slack. So we're going to start now with Accelo, where we'll find a couple of different options available for the kinds of things we can automate. In this case, looking at new tasks being assigned. And again, Zapier is excellent about checking for examples and tests right off the bat so that as we get this started, we can confirm that it works correctly without having to set up additional tests ourselves. Now comes the fun part. We get to set up what this notification looks like when it goes out to the team through Slack. So let's add it in. We'll set up a new action for Slack, and we're going to send a channel message. This way we can put it in a central channel that you've dedicated to notifications from Accelo. We can include the person who's been assigned the tasks, or even include the manager of that task if we want to make sure that multiple people are aware. And that way we have an easy historical place to refer back to all of these notifications. Now let's configure our template and make sure that our channel message here looks as clean and as helpful as possible. The first thing we're going to do is put our message into that particular channel. And in this case, I've already configured one just for this situation. And we'll build out the content of the message. We'll let the team know that a new task has been assigned, and we're even going to attention the person who has been assigned. Now, if you've used Slack, you know, of course, that you can use the @ symbol to attention anyone. And so we're going to use some of the convenient variables provided by Accelo to create that. So what we're going to do is build in that person's username. Now here at Accelo, our Slack usernames are formatted as the person's first name, period, last name. And so we're going to use that same format here to notify them. We're going to go @ their first name, period, last name. Slack will then automatically translate that to notify the correct user. Now, along with being notified that you have a task assigned to you, it would be helpful to know what that task involves. So let's include some additional details here for Cindy when she gets that new task assigned to her. It'll always be helpful to have a simple summary of what the task incorporates. A little bit of a description as well, if that has been included. And then important details like the due date. So she knows whether this is a today task or a tomorrow task. Now we can include a lot more information in these messages if we'd like. You'll notice here that we have quite a bit of information from the company we're working for to the start date, everything down to providing a link directly to view that task. We're going to keep it simple to start with so that she has just a note that there is a task to work on. Let's finalize our template. One of the other options we're going to enable is this one right here that I'm a big fan of. What this will do is when the message goes into Slack, rather than creating it on my behalf, it'll create it on behalf of a bot user. That way it's clearly something that's just a notification going to Cindy and not me sending her a message that, hey, she has a task. And then we have the opportunity to name and describe that bot to make it a little bit more clear what those are. So we'll call it the task assignment bot. That way there's no confusion what those notifications are for. And something I love is you can actually give that bot user its own icon to make it a little more clear what they are. Now I'm a big fan of the robot face just because it really brings it home that this is an automated notification, but you can always include any fun emoji you might have in your Slack account. Now Slack gives us a few other options around links and images. We're going to keep it simple though, with just those options. And we'll send our test out to Slack. Now, if we head over to Slack, we can see what the result looks like. Here we've got our special dedicated channel, and we've just had a message come through from the task assignment bot. The new task was assigned to Cindy. The task summary was CMS, it didn't have a description, and we even have a due date to keep track of. All of that without having to check our email or look into Accelo to know that work has come up. Now back in Zapier, our final step is to finish that off, give our Zap a name, and turn it on. And the great thing about Zaps is that they run 24/7 all day long in the background so that they'll be ready to perform that automation without you having to be involved in the process at all. Now those are just a couple examples of some of the more common Zaps that we'll see for bringing new information into Accelo and for taking Accelo information out of the system and sending it to one of the many products that you're using. Now for your needs, you may find that there are other apps or other triggers which you want to set up. So if there are any you're particularly interested in, please don't hesitate to let us know at support@accelo.com what you're looking for. We're happy to help set those up. Now for today, for you viewers out there, are there any Zaps that you're interested in or any questions you have about how that might be set up that we could assist with?
I wonder, Malin, does it ever happen in Zapier where there is an app that doesn't have all of those pre-designed actions that you can choose from? And if so, how do you use that for automation purposes?
Yeah, so it's an excellent point. When you're working in Zapier, if we just take a look at some of the options here, you'll notice that there's a really large amount of different apps and options available from all the big products out there. But even with this wide array of options, you're occasionally going to run into something you want to set up or a service you want to use that isn't included just yet. So for situations like those, Zapier offers a special tool called the email parser. And that tool can be used to pull information in just from templated emails, which you can format in any way that you might like and use those to cause automation to occur across the internet. So it's a really powerful tool. If you haven't seen that one yet, check out our blog. We posted something this week on how we can use this for a couple of specific situations like creating new issues in Jira automatically that I think you'll find really helpful for automating all of the different work you're doing across all of the products that you use. So that's a great question. Are there any other questions out there or anything else you'd be interested in seeing?
All right. Well, if you do happen to think of any questions, feel free to throw them our way. You can do that today, tomorrow, the next day, the next day. If you do, just go ahead and email them to bestpractices@accelo.com, and we will be happy to follow up with you. We do record all of these best practice webinars and post them to our video library. So if you'd like to reference this in the future, feel free to do so on our website. We post these best practice webinars once every 2 weeks, and our next webinar is regarding billable and cost rates. So it would be lovely if you would join us then. And if you have anything that you'd like to hear us talk about in the future, feel free to use that same email and send your suggestions our way. Thank you very much for joining us today, and we hope you have an excellent rest of your day. And thank you, Malin, very much as well.
Have a good one, everyone.